The Last Noodle. The dish hit terminal velocity 3 seconds before everything changed forever. The city of New Luminina never truly slept, it merely dozed between bouts of frenetic commercial activity. Advertisements plastered every visible surface, holographic billboards competed for attention, and the constant hum of hover traffic created a background orchestra that residents had long ago learned to tune out. In the 23rd district, where the towers weren't quite as tall and the neon wasn't quite as bright, a small restaurant called the Last Noodle had been serving questionable interpretations of Earth cuisine for the past 8 years. Gia Frost wasn't having a good day. Her dark hair, usually neatly tied in a bun, had partially escaped its confines after 12 hours on shift. A streak of red sauce decorated her left cheek, matching the other stains accumulating on her once pristine white apron. At 34, she'd spent far too many years balancing plates and expectations at the Last Noodle, a restaurant perpetually teetering on the edge of financial ruin. "Order up for table 7, shouted Grix, the perpetually sweaty chef whose 6 arms moved in a blur over the cooking stations. 3 of his eyes were focused on the bubbling pots while the other 2 watched the service terminal. And the inspector's report came back, "We've got 21 violations this time, down from 26. Hooray for progress." Gia muttered under her breath, snatching the plate of steaming pasta. The sauce smelled like something that had once been adjacent to a tomato and had absorbed its essence through proximity alone. She balanced it on her tray alongside 2 other orders and pushed through the swinging doors into the dining area. The Last Noodle's interior design philosophy could best be described as accidental kitsch. Mismatched chairs surrounded tables covered in plastic cloths printed with images of Earth landmarks that had ceased to exist centuries ago. The lighting fixtures flickered in a pattern that somehow never quite synced with the music, creating a disorienting effect that either enhanced or ruined the dining experience, depending on one's susceptibility to motion sickness. Table 7 was occupied by a solitary figure in the corner. When Gia had taken the order 15 minutes earlier, she'd hardly glanced at the customer, just another hood-wearing patron trying to remain anonymous in a city where privacy was a luxury few could afford. She approached now, mentally rehearsing her customary, "enjoy your meal," speech that always sounded just enthusiastic enough to avoid a complaint but not so enthusiastic as to invite conversation. "1 spicy Earth-style pasta with extra protein," she announced, setting the plate down. "Can I get you anything?" The words died in her throat as the hooded figure shifted, and she caught her first proper look at her customer. The Baraxian customer. Beneath the hood was not the expected humanoid face, but a scaled draconic visage with intelligent amber eyes that seemed to glow from within. Iridescent blue-gray scales caught the light as the creature turned to examine the food, and Gia spotted the tips of retractable horns peeking from its forehead. The dragon-like being wore what appeared to be a tailored navy jacket over a simple shirt, the clothing clearly modified to accommodate its non-human physique. "Is something wrong?" the dragon asked, its voice a surprisingly melodic rumble. Gia realized she'd been staring. "No, sorry. We don't get many dragarns in here." She winced at her own awkwardness. Species spotting was considered the height of rudeness in cosmopolitan districts. "Baraxian," the dragon corrected mildly. "Common mistake. Dragarns have the gill slits." He gestured vaguely toward his neck. "Right, of course. Sorry again." Gia took a deep breath. "Enjoy your meal. I'll check back in a few minutes." She retreated to the serving station where her coworker Plex was arranging sweetener packets with mathematical precision. "We've got a Baraxian at table 7, Gia whispered. Plex's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? They never leave the financial district. What's it wearing?" "Business casual, I think. Hard to tell under the cloak. Must be slumming it or lost." Plex leaned around Gia to peek. "Oh, that's definitely a Tedzari silk blend jacket. Probably costs more than we make in a year." The bell at the counter dinged, and Gia sighed. Back to the grind. For the next 20 minutes, she circulated among her tables, refilling glasses and taking orders. Each time she passed table 7, she noticed the Baraxian had barely touched his pasta. Instead, he seemed to be studying it with scientific interest, occasionally prodding a noodle with his fork or lifting the plate to examine it from different angles. Finally, as she was delivering a questionable blue beverage to the neighboring table, the Baraxian raised a talon to get her attention. "Excuse me," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "This sauce." Jia braced herself. The Last Noodle received complaints about the sauce on an hourly basis. She had a prepared speech about authentic reinterpretations of classic recipes that the owner had made all staff memorize. "Yes," she prompted when he didn't continue. "It's interesting, but insufficient in quantity. Could I trouble you for more?" Jia blinked. "More sauce?" "Yes. Considerably more, if possible." "I'll check with the kitchen." "The sauce situation." She hurried back through the swinging doors. "Grix, the Baraxian wants more sauce." Grix's middle eye swiveled toward her while the others remained fixed on various cooking tasks. "How much more?" "Considerably more." "Well, we've got that barrel of expired simulated tomato compound that failed inspection. Been saving it for the health inspector's next bribe meal, but..." One of his hands made a weighing gesture. "Hey, why not? Customer is always right, especially when they have enough teeth to remove your limbs." 5 minutes later, Jia returned to table 7 with a gravy boat filled to the brim with unnaturally red sauce. She placed it beside the Baraxian's plate. "Here you go. Extra sauce." The Baraxian peered at the gravy boat, then at Jia, then back at the sauce. "Thank you, but I was hoping for more." A twitch started in Jia's left eye. "More than this?" "Yes." He gestured at his plate with a talon. "The pasta-to-sauce ratio is approximately 7-to-1. I would prefer closer to 1-to-1. 1-to-1, Jia repeated flatly. "You want equal amounts of pasta and sauce?" "Ideally, yes." The Baraxian's expression was difficult to read, but something in his tone suggested he found this conversation perfectly reasonable. Jia's patience, worn thin by 12 hours of customer service, finally snapped. "You know what? Fine. You want more sauce? I'll get you more sauce." She stormed back to the kitchen, grabbed the entire pot of bubbling red liquid that Grix had been reducing for the evening service, and marched back out to table 7. "Here," she said, slamming the pot down on the table hard enough to send several droplets flying. "Is this enough sauce for you?" The Baraxian stared at the pot, then at Jia's flushed face. "Because apparently the gravy boat wasn't sufficient. Apparently, you need a swimming pool of sauce for your pasta. Is this better? Should I just dump the entire pot over your food? Would that satisfy you?" The restaurant had gone silent. Every patron was now watching the spectacle of a human waitress berating a creature that could probably incinerate her with a single breath. "I was merely," the Baraxian began. "No. I don't want to hear it." Jia's voice rose to a pitch that made the glassware vibrate. "I've been on my feet for 12 hours. I've been yelled at by 7 different customers, groped by 2, and stiffed on tips by 4. I am not going to stand here and argue about sauce quantities with you." In a moment that would later be replayed on security feeds across multiple planets, Jia Frost grabbed the plate of pasta and hurled its contents directly at the Baraxian's face. The unexpected reaction. Time seemed to slow. The pasta traveled through the air in a graceful arc, sauce and noodles separating slightly due to their different aerodynamic properties. Jia watched in horror as the entire mess splattered across the Baraxian's scaled face and pristine jacket. For a moment, absolute silence reigned in the Last Noodle. Even Grix had stopped clattering pots in the kitchen. Jia's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized what she'd done. She'd just assaulted what was likely a wealthy, influential being from one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Baraxian sat perfectly still, sauce dripping from his horns. A single noodle clung to his left nostril. His amber eyes, which moments before had seemed merely curious, now glowed with an intensity that made Jia's knees weak. Then, something extraordinary happened. The Baraxian began to laugh. It started as a low rumble in his chest, then built into a full-throated roar of delight that echoed off the restaurant's cheap walls. He wiped sauce from his eyes with one talon and looked at the mess covering his expensive jacket. "Magnificent," he declared, his voice carrying clearly across the stunned restaurant. "Absolutely magnificent. The sauce-to-pasta ratio is now perfect, indeed, it exceeds even my most optimistic expectations." Jia stared at him, mouth agape. "You're not angry?" "Angry? My dear server, I am ecstatic." The Baraxian stood, still dripping with sauce, and executed a formal bow that sent more noodles sliding to the floor. "In all my years of culinary research, I have never encountered such an innovative delivery method." "Culinary research?" Jia echoed weakly. "Oh yes. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Korath Velthane, senior xenobiologist with the Galactic Culinary Preservation Institute. I've been traveling the outer districts, documenting the evolution of Earth cuisine in diaspora communities." He gestured at his sauce-covered form. "And you, my passionate friend, have just provided me with the most authentic cultural experience of my entire expedition." The restaurant erupted in confused murmurs. Someone started clapping slowly, then others joined in until the entire establishment was applauding Jia's inadvertent performance art. I threw food at you," Jia said, still processing the situation. "Indeed. And with such conviction. Such raw emotional authenticity. Do you realize what you've done?" Karatha's eyes sparkled with excitement. "You've demonstrated the true spirit of Earth hospitality, the willingness to go to any lengths, even violent ones, to ensure customer satisfaction." Grix emerged from the kitchen, all 6 arms spread wide in amazement. "Is this actually happening right now? My good chef." Korath turned to address Grix, sauce still dripping from his chin. "Your establishment has just earned a place in my comprehensive cultural documentation. This spontaneous display of service dedication will be studied by xenobiologists for generations." The perfect ending. 3 weeks later, Jia stood in the same spot where she'd committed what she thought was career suicide, but now she was wearing a clean apron and a genuine smile. The Last Noodle had been transformed. Where flickering lights once created a disorienting atmosphere, warm ambient lighting now cast a welcoming glow. The mismatched furniture had been replaced with comfortable seating, and the walls displayed framed certificates and holographic reviews from the Galactic Culinary Institute. Most importantly, a bronze plaque near the entrance read, "Home of the Velthane Pasta Experience," as featured in Authentic Human Hospitality Rituals by Dr. Korath Velthane. "Order up," called Grix, but his voice carried none of its former stress. The kitchen ran smoothly now, equipped with proper ventilation and industrial-grade sauce warmers. 3 of his eyes watched the various stations while the other 2 admired the 5-star health rating certificate. Jia approached table 7, now permanently reserved and marked with a small plaque reading, "The Sauce Table," where a group of well-dressed Altarian diplomats waited expectantly. "Welcome to the Last Noodle," she said with practiced enthusiasm. "Would you like to try our signature Velthane experience?" The lead diplomat's translator hummed as she nodded eagerly. "We've heard remarkable things about your immersive service style." "Excellent choice." Jia winked. "And how do you feel about extra sauce?" Behind the serving station, Plex shook his head in amazement while arranging sweetener packets. He still couldn't quite believe how a moment of complete professional breakdown had somehow become the restaurant's greatest marketing success. The entrance chimed, and Jia looked up to see a familiar blue-gray scaled figure entering. Korath had become a regular, stopping by every few days to document what he called the ongoing evolution of the pasta-throwing cultural phenomenon. He'd also become something of a friend, always staying after closing to help clean up and share stories of his travels across the galaxy. Tonight, he carried a small gift box. "Jia, my dear cultural ambassador," he said warmly, setting the box on the counter. A small token of appreciation. Inside was a beautifully crafted serving ladle made from what appeared to be crystallized starlight. Engraved along the handle were the words, "For services above and beyond the call of sauce." "It's beautiful," Jia breathed, turning the ladle in the light. "It's also practical," Korath added with his rumbling laugh. "Perfect weight distribution for optimal throwing accuracy, should the need arise again." Jia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "You know, 3 weeks ago I thought my life was over when I threw that pasta at you. And instead, you discovered that sometimes the most authentic moments come from complete loss of control." Korath settled into his usual spot at table 7. Besides, that sauce really was insufficient in quantity. As the evening wound down and the last customer left, Jia found herself cleaning the same tables she'd cleaned for 8 years. But everything felt different now. The work had meaning, the atmosphere was welcoming, and she had a future that extended beyond mere survival. Grix poked his head out from the kitchen. "Jia, we got another reservation request from the Centauri Cultural Exchange. They specifically asked for the authentic human emotional dining experience." "Book them for Thursday," Jia called back. "And make sure we have plenty of sauce." Outside, New Luminina hummed with its usual frenetic energy, hover traffic weaving between buildings under the glow of countless advertisements. But inside the Last Noodle, something special had taken root, a place where species from across the galaxy could come together over questionable pasta and perfectly timed emotional breakdowns. Korath raised his cup of tea in a mock toast. "To cultural misunderstandings that become beautiful friendships. To sauce ratios and second chances," Jia replied, raising her own cup. "And in the 23rd district, where the towers weren't quite as tall and the neon wasn't quite as bright, the Last Noodle continued serving its unique interpretation of Earth cuisine, now with the galaxy's most authentic customer service experience included at no extra charge." The end.